I'm Ethan, 28, and I've poured my heart into coding for the past decade. My brother Nathan has always cast a shadow over my achievements. But nothing prepared me for the day he borrowed my laptop and destroyed 6 months of my work with a casual click. "Don't worry, you're not that important anyway," he said with that smirk I've known since childhood. What he didn't know was how this betrayal would reshape both our futures in ways neither of us could imagine. Let me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how sometimes life delivers the perfect response to those who underestimate you. Growing up in Seattle's rainy suburbs, I was the quiet kid with perpetually smudged glasses, while Nathan was the charming athlete who effortlessly commanded attention. Our parents never explicitly favored him, but the evidence mounted in small ways that stung over time. When Nathan brought home B-minuses, the refrigerator door proudly displayed them. My straight-A report cards earned brief nods before conversations shifted back to Nathan's latest football game. Our childhood home was modest but comfortable. Nestled in a neighborhood where most families had similar two-story houses with small, neat yards. Dad worked as a civil engineer, often bringing home blueprints that fascinated me from an early age. Mom taught elementary school, her patience seemingly endless with her students and with Nathan, less so with my excessive computer time. I discovered coding when I was 13 after a career day at school. A software developer showed us how to make a simple game, and something clicked inside me. Within weeks, I'd taught myself basic HTML and JavaScript using library books and dial-up internet. By 15, I was building websites for neighbors and small businesses. Nathan initially made fun of my nerdy hobby but quickly changed his tune when he realized I was making pocket money. Suddenly, he was telling our parents it was our business venture. Despite never contributing anything beyond occasionally dropping off business cards I'd printed, high school crystallized our dynamic. I joined the computer club and spent lunches in the lab working on increasingly complex projects. Nathan played 3 sports, dated the most popular girls, and managed to maintain just enough academic standing to keep playing. When college application time came, I earned a partial scholarship to Washington State for computer science. My parents seemed pleased but quickly shifted focus to Nathan's football recruitment visits. They attended every one of his games but missed my coding competition when I placed second statewide because it conflicted with Nathan's homecoming game. College was both liberation and struggle. I worked part-time at the university IT department, while taking a full course load. Nathan attended community college on a small athletic scholarship, dropped out after an injury in sophomore year, then drifted between jobs. Yet somehow at family gatherings, his temporary position at a sporting goods store received more attention than my internship at a promising tech startup. After graduation, I spent 2 years at a mid-sized tech company before joining Innovate Tech, a startup with revolutionary ideas about workflow automation software. My cramped one-bedroom apartment in Seattle's Fremont district wasn't impressive, but it was mine, paid for with my own success. The walls were covered with whiteboards filled with code snippets and algorithmic solutions. My desk, really just a door laid across 2 filing cabinets, held dual monitors where I spent countless hours refining my coding skills. The project that consumed me for 6 months before Nathan's fateful visit was potentially career-defining. I was developing a proprietary algorithm for automated data verification that could revolutionize how our clients handled information processing. My boss, Marcus, had taken a chance by assigning it to me despite my relative newness at the company. "I see something in you," he'd said. "A thoroughness most young developers lack." That vote of confidence meant everything to me. Each line of code I wrote was meticulously documented. Each function was tested against multiple scenarios. I'd spend weekends and evenings perfecting it, declining invitations and putting my sparse social life on further hold. The project had become an extension of myself, proof that I wasn't just the other brother, but someone with valuable skills and vision. Nathan had visited my apartment 3 times in the year since I'd moved in. Each visit featured the same pattern. He'd arrive unannounced, raid my refrigerator, make comments about my boring lifestyle, then leave when something more interesting came up. During his most recent visit 2 weeks before the laptop incident, he'd glanced at my screens while I explained an exciting breakthrough in my algorithm. "Looks like a bunch of gibberish to me," he'd interrupted. "How much does this stuff actually pay?" "Enough for a better apartment soon, I hope." When I mentioned the project might lead to a promotion, he changed the subject to his latest job prospect. Apparently unconvinced that typing on keyboards could constitute meaningful work. Despite everything, I still wanted my brother's approval on some level. I still hoped he might someday acknowledge my abilities or show genuine interest in my life. That lingering desire for familial validation would soon prove to be my greatest vulnerability, and ultimately, the catalyst for unexpected change. The knock on my door came at 8:17 a.m. on a Saturday in April. I remember checking the time because I'd been deep in a coding session since 5 that morning, making significant progress on a particularly tricky section of my project. Opening the door revealed Nathan, dressed in what he considered business casual, khakis that needed ironing and a polo shirt with the logo of the last sports bar where he'd worked. "Morning, bro," he said, strolling past me without waiting for an invitation. "Got any coffee?" I rubbed my eyes beneath my glasses. "Nathan? What are you doing here so early?" He was already opening cabinets in my small kitchen. "Job hunting. Big opportunity. Very corporate. Very important." He spoke in choppy sentences between rummaging sounds. I moved to my laptop, saving my work and making a quick commit to my private repository, though not a complete one, a decision I would soon regret. "That's great. What kind of position?" "Management track at Tech Solutions. Starts in their customer service department, but fast promotion potential." He found my coffee and started brewing a pot without asking. "The thing is, my laptop's completely dead. Battery won't hold the charge, and the interview process requires some online assessments and application forms." My stomach tightened. I knew where this was heading. "When's the deadline?" "Tomorrow night." Nathan poured coffee into my NASA mug, the one labeled "Do Not Touch" that I used exclusively. "I just need to borrow your laptop for the day. I'll have it back by tonight. Tomorrow morning at the latest." I glanced at my computer, thinking of the 6 months of work saved on it. "I don't know, Nathan. I'm in the middle of something really important." "More important than helping your brother get a real career?" He gave me the same look he'd used since childhood to make me feel selfish for having boundaries. "Mom asked about you yesterday. Told her you were probably too busy with your computer stuff to call." The familiar guilt trip. I should have recognized the manipulation. But the mention of our mother added the exact pressure point he knew would work. Still, I tried to protect myself. "You can use it, but there are conditions," I said firmly. "First, stay away from my work folders. They're clearly labeled Innovate Tech and Algorithm Project. Second, don't download anything that could bring in viruses. Third, I need it back tonight, not tomorrow." "Tonight." Nathan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. I'm not going to mess with your precious coding stuff. I just need a functioning computer for a few hours." He took another sip from my mug. "What's the password?" Against my better judgment, I wrote it down on a post-it note. "Just for today, I'm changing it tomorrow." "Such trust." He smirked. "Don't worry, your secret formula for computer nerd fame is safe with me." After showing him the basics of navigating my laptop setup, I grabbed my jacket. "I'm going to the coffee shop down the street to work on my tablet. Text me when you're done." "Will do." "Thanks, bro. I owe you one." The sincerity in his voice almost sounded genuine. At the coffee shop, I could only accomplish minimal work on my tablet. The limited screen space and processing power made serious coding nearly impossible. Hours passed, and no text came from Nathan. I sent several messages that showed as delivered but remained unanswered. By evening, anxiety had me pacing my apartment building's lobby. When Nathan finally appeared at 9 that night, he carried my laptop with the casual disregard of someone transporting a cheap umbrella rather than another person's livelihood. Sorry for the delay. Application process was more involved than I expected. He handed over the computer without meeting my eyes. Is everything okay? I asked, immediately sensing something was off. Yeah, fine. Thanks for the loan. Gotta run, meeting some friends. He was already backing toward the door. I opened the laptop as he left, immediately navigating to my project folder. Empty. Completely empty. My heart rate doubled as I searched everywhere. Documents, downloads, recycle bin. Nothing. 6 months of work had vanished. I called Nathan immediately. When he answered, the background noise suggested he was already at a bar. What did you do to my computer? My voice shook with a combination of rage and panic. What are you talking about? His tone conveyed mild annoyance rather than concern. My project files. They're all gone. Every single one. A pause then. Oh, that? Yeah. I needed to clear some space to download the assessment software. Your hard drive was almost full. The casual admission stopped my breath. You deleted my work? My entire project? Nathan. That was 6 months of my life. Don't you have it backed up somewhere? Isn't that what you computer guys always talk about? Another pause. Look, I needed the space, and those folders were huge. I told you specifically not to touch those folders. My voice had risen enough that I was conscious of neighbors potentially hearing. Well, I thought you were being dramatic. It's just computer stuff. Can't you just write it again? The background noise grew louder as if he was moving deeper into the bar. Just write it again. Do you have any idea what you've done? His response would echo in my mind for months afterward. Don't worry, you're not that important anyway. It's not like you were curing cancer or something. Listen, I gotta go. Thanks for the laptop. The call ended, leaving me staring at an empty folder where my professional future had been stored just hours before. The betrayal wasn't just in the action but in the dismissal, the complete devaluation of my work, my time, and by extension, me. As I sat in stunned silence, the full impact hadn't even registered yet. That would come in the sleepless nights ahead, along with the desperate realization that my brother had not only deleted my files but emptied the trash and somehow overwritten portions of my hard drive, making even data recovery attempts futile. Sunday morning arrived with the harsh reality that my situation wasn't a nightmare I could wake from. After 3 hours of fitful sleep, I sat at my desk with bloodshot eyes, running another recovery program that promised to find deleted files. Like the previous 4 attempts, it retrieved fragments, corrupted snippets of code that only emphasized how much was permanently lost. My phone displayed 7 missed calls from Marcus, my boss. The weekly check-in call I'd missed while dealing with the crisis. His voicemail started professionally concerned and ended plainly worried. I needed to call him back, but what would I say? That I'd handed over months of proprietary company work to my irresponsible brother who deleted it because he needed space? When I finally made the call, my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Ethan? Everything okay? You missed our Sunday check-in. Marcus was direct but not unkind. I've had a situation with my project files. The understatement of the year. My brother borrowed my laptop and deleted everything. Silence stretched for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Everything? The entire verification algorithm? His tone remained measured, which somehow made it worse than if he'd shouted. Yes. I've been running recovery software, but so far nothing useful has been salvaged. My throat constricted around the words. Ethan. That project represents a significant investment for Innovatech. We're presenting to potential clients in 3 weeks. No accusation, just facts that landed like blows. I know. I'm going to rebuild it. I'll work around the clock. From memory? The entire algorithm? Now disbelief crept into his voice. I have notes. Some handwritten diagrams. I can do this. I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. After another long pause, Marcus sighed. Come to the office tomorrow. We'll assess the situation properly and see what can be salvaged. That night brought no sleep at all. I filled notebook after notebook with fragments of code structures I could recall, variable names, function relationships, anything to capture the ghost of what I'd built before it faded completely from memory. My hands cramped from writing, but stopping meant thinking about Nathan's words. Don't worry, you're not that important anyway. Not important. 6 months of innovation reduced to not important. Every childhood memory of being overlooked resurfaced with fresh sting. Every time my achievements had been minimized while Nathan received praise for mediocrity played in mental surround sound. Monday morning in Marcus's office felt like a performance review and funeral combined. I brought my notebooks, my tablet with the minimal work I'd done at the coffee shop, and the handful of corrupted files the recovery software had managed to retrieve. Walk me through exactly what happened, Marcus said. His office door closed for privacy, or perhaps to contain the disaster. I explained everything, leaving out only Nathan's cruel dismissal. That part felt too personal, too revealing of the family dynamic I'd spent years trying to compartmentalize away from my professional life. I should have had better backup protocols, I concluded, accepting responsibility even though rage at Nathan still burned beneath my calm exterior. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me. Yes, you should have. That's a hard lesson learned. But you're not the first developer to experience catastrophic data loss. His understanding only made me feel worse. I'd rather have been reprimanded than shown compassion I wasn't sure I deserved. The presentation to clients is in 23 days, he continued. Rebuilding from scratch in that time frame would be nearly impossible even for a senior developer. I can do it. The words came automatically, desperately. Ethan, the company has invested heavily in this project. We may need to bring in additional resources or postpone the client presentation. Translation. My mistake might cost the company money and credibility. I left Marcus's office with a provisional plan. I would attempt reconstruction while he consulted with the development team about mitigation strategies. The next 2 weeks became a blur of 18-hour workdays. I subsisted on delivery food and energy drinks, coding until my vision blurred, then catching 2-hour naps before continuing. My colleagues offered help where they could, but the specialized nature of what I'd built meant most of the burden fell on me alone. Midway through the second week, Nathan texted as if nothing had happened. Heard back from that job yet? Put in a good word for your bro if they contact you. I didn't respond. My parents called around the same time. Mom's voice carried the usual cheer. Nathan told us he's applied at a tech company. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you two ended up working in the same industry? When I explained what had happened with my project, her response cut deep. Well, I'm sure he didn't mean to cause trouble. You know Nathan, he's not very computer savvy. And you're so good with technology, I'm sure you can fix it. Dad added, these things happen, son. Remember when you accidentally broke Nathan's trophy in 9th grade? These sibling things have a way of balancing out. A broken $20 trophy versus 6 months of career-defining work. The comparison confirmed what I'd always suspected. In my family's eyes, my achievements and struggles simply didn't carry the same weight as Nathan's. Sleep deprivation and stress took their toll. I developed a persistent eye twitch. My appetite vanished. Colleagues stopped asking if I was okay because the answer was so obviously no. With each passing day, the client presentation loomed larger while my progress felt insignificant against what had been lost. Then came the conversation with HR about taking leave for mental health reasons, a well-intentioned suggestion that felt like confirmation of failure. If I stepped away now, would I ever find the momentum to return? Would the company even want me back after such a massive setback? Nathan's words echoed constantly. Not that important anyway. In my darkest moments, lying on my couch at 3 a.m. with burning eyes and a mind too wired to sleep yet too exhausted to code, I began to wonder if he was right. Maybe I had overestimated my value. Maybe this project, this career, this passion, maybe none of it mattered as much as I thought. This spiral continued until the morning I received an email from a colleague that would unknowingly change everything. Hey! Didn't you upload some preliminary test modules to your GitHub back in February? Might be worth checking if anything useful is still there. The GitHub repository. In my panic and exhaustion, I'd completely forgotten about it. For months earlier, I had uploaded several core modules to a private repository during a weekend when office servers were down for maintenance. It wasn't the complete project, not even close, but it was something tangible, something real to build upon. With trembling hands, I navigated to the long-unused account. There they were, 12 files containing approximately 30% of the project's foundational code. Not the refined versions I'd eventually developed, but the structural framework that had taken weeks to conceive. I downloaded everything, feeling the first genuine spark of hope since opening that empty folder. That same afternoon, while searching for a charger cable in my desk drawer, I discovered a USB drive I'd used months ago to share a presentation with the marketing team. On a hunch, I plugged it in and found an early version of the algorithm documentation, outdated but containing valuable pseudocode and technical specifications I'd completely forgotten. These discoveries triggered a memory. I'd emailed myself some test results before a meeting with Marcus in March. Digging through my email archive uncovered 3 messages with crucial attachments, data verification results that revealed important aspects of how the algorithm had been structured. Piece by piece, fragments of my lost work emerged from digital corners I'd overlooked. None were current, none were complete. But together they formed islands of certainty in the ocean of what I was trying to reconstruct. For the first time in 2 weeks, I slept for 6 uninterrupted hours. I awoke with unexpected clarity. The project disaster had forced me into a mental corner where the only escape was to think differently. What if, instead of trying to replicate exactly what was lost, I built something better? The original algorithm had been my first attempt at solving a complex problem. With the benefit of hindsight and the painful lessons of starting over, could I create a more elegant solution? That day, I called Marcus and requested a meeting. In his office, I laid out a new approach, one that would require the same intensive work schedule but with a different target. I've recovered about 30% of the original code, I explained, but I think this is an opportunity rather than just a setback. The original algorithm worked, but it was inefficient in these specific areas. I pointed to my notes. A complete rebuild gives us the chance to address limitations I discovered along the way. Marcus studied my diagrams with skeptical interest. You're proposing to not only reconstruct but improve the algorithm within the same time frame? Yes. Working with what I've recovered, plus everything I learned during the initial development, I believe I can create something more streamlined and powerful. The confidence in my voice surprised even me. This is either brilliant adaptation or desperate overreach, Marcus said, but I detected a hint of admiration in his expression. You have 11 days until the client presentation. If you genuinely believe this approach is viable, I'll hold off on bringing in external consultants. That vote of confidence, however tentative, fueled what became the most productive period of my professional life. The hours remained long, but they were driven by inspiration rather than desperation. I refined concepts that had been merely adequate in the original version. I restructured data flows that had always felt clunky but that I'd been too deep in the process to properly address. Each day brought new breakthroughs. Colleagues who had been sympathetically distant now engaged enthusiastically with my revised approach. Even Marcus began stopping by my workstation for updates that evolved from checking progress to genuine technical discussions. On day 9 of 11, At 2 in the morning, when only the security guard and I remained in the building, I ran a comprehensive test of the new algorithm against our most complex dataset. The results appeared on my screen. Performance metrics 35% better than my original version had ever achieved. The verification accuracy improved by a similar margin. What I had created out of necessity wasn't just a replacement, it was an upgrade. I texted Marcus despite the hour. Breakthrough. New algorithm outperforms original. Details tomorrow. His response came immediately, suggesting he'd been as sleep-deprived as I was. Conference room. 8 a.m. Bring everything. The morning meeting expanded beyond Marcus to include the CTO and 2 senior developers. For 2 hours, I walked them through the new algorithm, explaining how the catastrophic loss had paradoxically opened paths to innovation I might never have explored otherwise. The CTO, notorious for his stoic demeanor, actually smiled. Sometimes creation requires destruction first. Though I wouldn't recommend this particular method to other developers. 2 days before the client presentation, we conducted a full dress rehearsal. The new algorithm performed flawlessly, completing verification tasks with unprecedented speed and accuracy. What had begun as disaster had transformed into triumph through a combination of necessity, recovered fragments, and a willingness to reimagine rather than merely reconstruct. After the successful rehearsal, Marcus asked me to stay behind as others filed out of the conference room. "I've been authorized to share some confidential information with you," he said once we were alone. "InnovateTech has acquired DataSync Technologies, a smaller competitor that has excellent products but poor management structure." I nodded, unsure how this related to my project. "They need a new department head for their verification systems division, someone who understands both the technical aspects and has demonstrated leadership under pressure." Marcus leaned forward. "I've recommended you for the position." The statement took several seconds to process. "Me? But I'm barely 2 years into my career." "Wouldn't someone more senior?" "Someone more senior would have crumbled under what you've just been through," Marcus interrupted. "You didn't just recover from a catastrophic setback, you innovated through it. That's exactly the kind of leadership the new division needs." As the opportunity's magnitude sank in, Marcus added one more detail. "The position would effectively make you director level. You'd be building your own team, with hiring authority for 6 new positions. Interviews start next week." That night, alone in my apartment, I allowed myself to fully experience the emotional whiplash of the past 3 weeks, from devastating loss to unexpected opportunity. The path had been brutal, but it had led somewhere I couldn't have anticipated. I thought about Nathan's dismissal of my work and importance, then about my new responsibility to build an entire department. The universe, it seemed, had a peculiar sense of timing and justice. The client presentation exceeded all expectations. What began as a technical demonstration evolved into excited conversations about implementation timelines and expanded use cases. By afternoon's end, contracts were being drafted for the largest service agreement in InnovateTech's history. Marcus pulled me aside as executives exchanged handshakes. "The transition to your new role begins tomorrow," he said. "HR will brief you on the department structure and interview protocols. Your first candidates are scheduled for Monday." The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I studied DataSync's products, organizational charts, and the job descriptions for positions I would need to fill. My tiny apartment transformed into a war room of notes, diagrams, and strategy documents. For the first time since Nathan's betrayal, I didn't think about lost code. My mind was too occupied with future possibilities. Monday morning found me in a newly assigned office at InnovateTech headquarters, significantly larger than my previous cubicle and featuring a nameplate. Ethan Reynolds, Director of Verification Systems. The surrealism of the moment was interrupted by my new assistant, Patricia, bringing the day's interview schedule. 6 candidates today, 10 tomorrow, she explained. HR has pre-screened them based on the requirements you provided. I scanned the list of names, stopping at the third interview scheduled for that afternoon, Nathan Reynolds. Is everything all right, Mr. Reynolds? Patricia asked, noticing my expression. Yes, fine. Just recognize the name. I kept my tone neutral. Could you pull the complete application file for Nathan Reynolds? I want to review it before the interview. After she left, I sat in stunned silence. Nathan had applied to my department. The coincidence seemed impossible until I remembered his mention of applying to Tech Solutions. He must have meant Data Sync Technologies, recently acquired by Innovatech. He would have no way of knowing about the acquisition, much less my new position. Nathan's application file revealed the expected embellishments. His 6-month stint at a retail electronics store described as Technology Sales Management, a weekend workshop in basic HTML characterized as Web Development Expertise. Most concerning were claims of project management experience and data system knowledge. That simply didn't exist. Ethical questions immediately arose. Should I recuse myself completely? Inform HR about our relationship? Proceed with the interview to see if he would recognize and acknowledge his past behavior? The situation presented a complex intersection of professional responsibility and personal history. After careful consideration, I decided on a measured approach. I would inform HR about our relationship and request another director to conduct the initial interview. I would observe via the department's standard two-way monitoring system used for training purposes. Then join only for final assessment questions if Nathan advanced that far based on his actual qualifications. HR approved this approach as appropriate given the circumstances. Family relationships don't disqualify candidates, the director explained. But transparency in the process is essential. As Nathan's interview time approached, I settled into the observation room adjacent to the interview space. Through the one-way glass, I watched as Nathan entered. Dressed in a suit that still had the store tags partially visible under one cuff, clearly purchased for the occasion. The technical portion of the interview went poorly from the start. When asked to explain his understanding of data verification systems, Nathan offered vague generalities clearly memorized from online definitions. The coding assessment revealed he couldn't write even basic functions. His claimed project management experience fell apart under specific questions about methodology and tools. Despite this, Nathan displayed the charisma that had always served him well in social situations. He built easy rapport with the interviewer, deflected technical questions with confident generalizations, and maintained the same self-assured demeanor that had convinced many people throughout his life that he was more competent than his actual performance suggested. To my surprise, the interviewer included Nathan among candidates advancing to the final round, not based on technical merit, but noting his exceptional communication skills and potential for client-facing roles. This development meant I would now need to participate in his final assessment. That evening, I carefully considered my approach. Professional ethics demanded fair treatment of all candidates regardless of personal history. Yet allowing Nathan's deception to continue unchallenged felt equally wrong. I settled on a straightforward strategy. I would ask the same challenging but fair questions I planned for all candidates, neither easier nor harder because of our relationship. The next morning, I sat alongside 2 other department heads in the final interview panel. When Nathan entered the room, his confident expression faltered momentarily upon seeing me, then reassembled into forced composure. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," I said, using the same professional tone I'd adopted with previous candidates. "Please have a seat." "Ethan? What are you doing here?" The question emerged before he could suppress it. "I'm the Director of Verification Systems," I replied evenly. "This position would report to my department." The color drained from Nathan's face as understanding dawned. He glanced at the other interviewers, clearly calculating whether to acknowledge our relationship or pretend professional distance. "I see," he finally said. That's unexpected. The interview proceeded with standard questions about experience and technical knowledge. Nathan struggled through responses, his earlier confidence replaced by growing discomfort. When asked about handling project setbacks, he stumbled noticeably, perhaps recognizing the irony given our recent history. After the formal questions concluded, protocol allowed candidates to ask questions of their own. Nathan seized this opportunity. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" he asked me directly, ignoring the other interviewers. I maintained professional composure. Any questions relevant to the position should be addressed to the full panel. "This is a personal matter," he insisted. "Then it would be inappropriate to discuss during an interview. We can schedule time afterward if necessary." My tone remained neutral despite the tension crackling between us. When the interview ended, the other panel members excused themselves for a brief assessment discussion. Nathan remained seated, his expression a complex mixture of embarrassment and indignation. "You could have told me you worked here," he said once we were alone. "Would that have changed how you represented your qualifications on your application?" I kept my voice calm. "This is about the laptop thing, isn't it? You're still mad about that?" The casual dismissal of what he'd done struck me anew. "This is about a hiring process, Nathan. Your application claims experience you don't have for a technical role you're not qualified to fill. So you're going to blackball me because of one mistake?" His tone shifted to the familiar accusatory note I'd heard throughout childhood. "No one is blackballing you. You've been evaluated on your actual qualifications, not our personal history." I gathered the interview materials into a folder. "The panel will make a decision based on all candidates' performances." "Right." Sarcasm edged his response. "I'm sure you'll be completely objective." I met his gaze directly. "More objective than someone who deletes 6 months of another person's work and dismisses it as unimportant." The direct reference to his actions silenced him momentarily. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its defensive edge. "I didn't realize how important that project was to you. That's the problem, Nathan. You never bother to understand what matters to other people." The professional veneer I'd maintained began to crack. "You took my laptop, deliberately ignored my instructions, destroyed my work, and told me I wasn't important enough for it to matter. Now you're sitting in my department, applying for a job you're not qualified for, apparently expecting special treatment despite everything." His eyes dropped to the table. "I needed that job application software. The files were taking up space. And now you need this job. But unlike your approach to my work, I respect this position enough not to fill it with someone who can't perform its requirements." I stood, signaling the conversation's end. "The panel will contact all candidates with decisions by Friday." Nathan left without further argument, his usually confident posture diminished. As I watched him walk through the office, I felt no satisfaction, only a weary recognition that some patterns run too deep to change without significant consequences forcing reassessment. The hiring panel unanimously rejected Nathan's application based on technical deficiencies. When the formal letter went out later that week, I added a personal note. "Your communication skills are strong. Consider roles that leverage those strengths rather than positions requiring technical expertise you haven't yet developed." It was both professional guidance and personal truth, advice I hoped might redirect him toward authentic growth rather than continued pretense. 2 weeks passed without word from Nathan. The department began taking shape as qualified candidates accepted offers and projects transitioned from DataSync's previous structure. My days filled with orientation sessions, technology assessments, and strategic planning meetings, normal busyness that helped distance me from the emotional turbulence of recent events. Then came a text message on a Wednesday evening. "Can we talk?" "Not about the job. About everything else." After consideration, I suggested meeting at a coffee shop near my office, neutral territory with built-in time limitations due to business hours. Nathan arrived precisely on time. Another uncharacteristic behavior that suggested something had shifted. He looked different, less polished but somehow more substantial. The designer clothes were replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. The carefully styled hair now slightly grown out. Small changes that collectively signaled something beyond surface adjustment. "Thanks for meeting me," he began after ordering black coffee, not the elaborate concoction he would typically choose. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." I nodded but offered no immediate response, curious where he would take the conversation without my guidance. "When I saw you in that interview room," something clicked. He rotated his coffee cup slowly. "All my life, I've been faking it, pretending to know things, claiming achievements, expecting doors to open based on charm rather than actual skill. It usually worked just enough to keep going." The frank self-assessment surprised me. Nathan had never been one for introspection. "Seeing you in that director position, a real position you earned through actual work, made me realize how empty everything I've been doing feels." He met my eyes directly. "And it made me understand what I took from you when I deleted your work. It wasn't just files. It was evidence of who you really are." "Why did you apply for a job you knew you weren't qualified for?" I asked, more curious than accusatory. "Because that's what I've always done, aimed for things that seemed impressive without considering whether I could actually do them." A self-deprecating smile flickered briefly. The difference this time was getting caught by someone who knew the truth. We sat in silence for several moments before he continued. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Not just for deleting your work, though that was inexcusable. I'm sorry for dismissing it as unimportant, for never acknowledging your achievements, for treating your passion as some weird hobby rather than the meaningful career it is." His voice remained steady, each word seemingly considered rather than impulsively offered. The apology sounded genuine, but experience had taught me caution with Nathan's moments of apparent sincerity. "What are you planning to do now?" I asked. "Something honest for once." He took a sip of coffee. "I enrolled in actual coding classes at the community college. Basic stuff, but real learning instead of pretending to already know. And I took a job at an electronics repair shop. The pay is terrible, but I'm learning how things actually work instead of just selling them." The practical steps toward genuine skill development suggested a seriousness I hadn't expected. Still, decades of established patterns left me skeptical. "That's a positive start," I acknowledged. "But why the sudden change?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "Humiliation is a powerful motivator," he finally said. "Sitting in that interview, watching you evaluate my lies while holding a position you earned through actual work, I couldn't maintain the fiction anymore. Not even to myself." He leaned forward slightly. "I always thought your path was the harder one, all that studying, coding for hours, working when everyone else was having fun. I took shortcuts because they seemed easier. But now I'm 31 with nothing solid to show for it, while you've built something real." The conversation shifted to specifics of his classes, the repair techniques he was learning, books he'd started reading. Each detail revealed someone beginning to value substance over appearance, a fundamental change I wouldn't have thought possible weeks earlier. As we prepared to leave, Nathan asked, "Do you think we can start over somehow? Not pretend nothing happened, but maybe build something different going forward?" The question required careful consideration. "Not start over," I finally said. "That erases too much history, good and bad. But we can move forward differently if the changes you're making are genuine." "They are," he said with uncharacteristic quietness. "For the first time, I'm doing something because I want to build actual skills, not just the appearance of them." We parted with tentative plans to meet again in a few weeks. As I watched him walk away, I realized the laptop incident, devastating as it had been, had catalyzed unexpected growth for both of us. My loss had forced innovation that advanced my career. His actions and their consequences had shattered illusions he'd maintained about himself for decades. Sometimes destruction indeed precedes necessary creation, though preferably through less painful catalysts than we had experienced. 2 months after that coffee shop conversation, my department celebrated its first major milestone: successful implementation of the improved verification algorithm across all DataSync client systems. The integration had proceeded smoothly, with performance metrics exceeding even our optimistic projections. My team had coalesced into a cohesive unit, each member bringing complementary strengths to our collective work. My new office featured something the cramped apartment workspace never could: separation between professional and personal space. I had moved to a larger apartment closer to headquarters, with dedicated rooms for work and relaxation. The boundary helped establish healthier patterns than the round-the-clock coding that had characterized my earlier professional life. Nathan and I had maintained cautious contact, meeting every few weeks for brief conversations. Each interaction revealed small but consistent signs of change. He showed genuine interest in my projects without claiming false understanding. He spoke honestly about struggles in his coding classes rather than pretending expertise. Most significantly, he had begun taking responsibility for his choices without deflecting or blaming circumstances. When our parents suggested a family dinner to celebrate my promotion and Nathan's new direction, I approached the evening with measured expectations. Family dynamics rarely transform completely, regardless of individual growth. The restaurant our father selected was upscale but unpretentious, a steakhouse with private dining areas that balanced celebration with conversation. I arrived first, followed shortly by Nathan, who brought a small gift bag. "Just something I thought might be useful," he explained, handing it to me. Inside was a high-capacity external hard drive with a note: "For backing up important things, professional and personal." The thoughtfulness of the gift, directly acknowledging past mistakes while supporting future security, struck me more powerfully than any verbal apology could have. Our parents arrived minutes later, Mom immediately launching into questions about Nathan's classes and new apartment before even acknowledging my presence. Some patterns remained resistant to change. "Actually," Nathan interrupted after her third consecutive question to him, "I want to hear about Ethan's department first. He's building something impressive." The redirection was subtle but unmistakable, a small correction to the familiar dynamic that had always centered Nathan in family conversations. Dad's eyebrows rose slightly while Mom appeared momentarily disoriented by the script change. "Of course," she recovered quickly. "Tell us about your team, Ethan." As I described the department structure and our recent implementation success, I noticed something previously rare in family gatherings: my parents' undivided attention. No glances at phones. No interruptions to redirect conversation toward Nathan. Just genuine listening. When dinner arrived, Nathan asked specific questions about my work that revealed he'd been researching to understand basic concepts. "I'm only a few months into learning this stuff," he admitted openly. "So correct me if I'm getting terms wrong." The acknowledgement of his beginner status, spoken without defensiveness or false claims, represented perhaps the most significant change in his approach to life. Watching him engage from a place of genuine curiosity rather than pretended knowledge revealed a version of my brother I'd rarely glimpsed before. Later, as conversation turned to his progress, Nathan described his repair work and classes with unexpected humility. "I should have started learning properly years ago instead of just claiming skills on resumes," he said. "It's harder than I expected, but also more satisfying to actually understand how things work." Dad, who had always accepted Nathan's exaggerated claims without question, studied him with newfound respect. "That's mature perspective, son. Late starts still beat never starting." The evening progressed with a gradually lightening atmosphere. Decades of established family dynamics slowly shifting towards something more balanced. Not perfect transformation, but noticeable change. As we walked to our cars afterward, Nathan lingered behind our parents to speak privately. I've been thinking about what you said about not starting over but moving forward differently. It's good advice for more than just our situation. How so? I asked. I spent years pretending to be things I wasn't: experienced, knowledgeable, successful. Trying to start over with each new job or relationship while carrying all the same patterns. He gazed upward briefly, organizing thoughts. Moving forward differently means acknowledging where I actually am and building from there, not creating some fictional fresh start. The insight reflected deeper self-awareness than I'd previously thought possible for him. That's an important distinction. I agreed. I'm not going to become a coding genius overnight. He continued. Maybe never. But I can become someone who actually knows what he claims to know, even if that's a more modest set of skills than I used to pretend having. We reached our cars, parked coincidentally side by side. Before departing, Nathan added one final thought. I deleted your work because I didn't value what I didn't understand. I'm trying to understand more things now so I can properly value them. The statement encapsulated a fundamental shift in worldview, from dismissing the unfamiliar to seeking to comprehend it first. Progress worth acknowledging, however belatedly it had come. In the months that followed, our relationship established new patterns based on more authentic foundations. Nathan occasionally asked for technical advice on his coding assignments, accepting guidance without defensiveness. I found myself genuinely interested in his progress, recognizing the courage required to begin learning at his age after years of pretense. My department continued thriving, the innovative algorithm becoming a cornerstone of the company's service offerings. The crisis that had nearly derailed my career had ultimately accelerated it in unexpected ways, forcing creative solutions I might never have discovered otherwise. One evening, working late in my home office, I discovered an old notebook containing fragments of the original algorithm, handwritten notes from the desperate reconstruction attempt that had seemed so inadequate at the time. Reviewing them now, I recognized how that pressure had broken my attachment to initial approaches, allowing better solutions to emerge. Sometimes the path forward requires losing what we thought was essential. Sometimes betrayal, painful as it is, shatters illusions that limit our growth. Sometimes being told we're not that important pushes us to discover just how significant our contributions can truly become. Life rarely delivers justice in perfect narrative arcs. But occasionally, if we remain focused on our own growth rather than others' limitations, we find ourselves in positions we never anticipated, perhaps even interviewing the very people who once dismissed our worth. Have you ever experienced someone underestimating you, only to prove them wrong through your own success? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this journey of betrayal, growth, and unexpected outcomes resonated with you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned at all. It's simply becoming exactly who you were meant to be all along.